We do have a special guest today. Deborah Heiss is here with us, and she is going to be talking about Neora. She is going to be talking about the historic win that they had and how they made it through 7 years and 10 months or 11 months in working through the situation. And I'll tell you, if you don't know about it, there's some good stuff online. I'll tell you where to find out more information about it. Last month, I covered the FTC guidelines, and we shared with you a Bible that I put together with all of the FTC guidelines. I really appreciate the comments that came in about that. It's something that I do. I take the paper guidelines, print them out, 3-hole punch them, put them in a 3-hole binder and call them the Bible. So that's always very helpful for me. Now, we're not going to spend any time on those today because we've got a busy show. And as you know, you can send me an email anytime you'd like. And we do offer compliance training workshops. We're going to be having a training workshop in August, and then again in November, and again in January. We are doing these programs so that people that work in the compliance departments at different direct selling companies have an opportunity to learn from people that have been in the trenches, people that are case studies, and they're able to associate that with a legal opinion and a perspective. So we have Kevin Grimes on the call regularly, Clay Brewer on the call regularly. So we do like to look at both sides of the equation. So what we're going to do now is get into a little bit about our guest. I have so many notes and they're all offset because Kevin and Sandra aren't here. So, all right. If you have any questions for Deborah, put them into the chat and Patrick will let me know about those immediately. Now, let me just share with you a little bit about the show. It's hosted by the Institute for Global Compliance. And for more information on the Institute, go to the Direct Selling Solutions website and you'll be able to learn more about membership and what the Institute is all about. Basically, it's about introducing compliance education across the board, whether that's in direct selling or other industries. Right now, we're just focusing on the direct selling industry. So we're ready to rock and roll. This is the show, Neora, how'd they do it? On today's edition, we're going to be talking with Deborah, and we will also identify ways that you can set yourself up for success in case of an emergency, a crisis, as we call it. We're also going to review 3 things that you can do that you must do before a crisis arrives. The one thing that we're very clear on after all the research that I've done for the show is Neora had their act together without any fail. They had it together before the crisis arrived. And that's what's so interesting to see how Jeff and Deborah did that. Well, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Donna Marie Saratella, and I'm the queen of compliance. Watch out because I'm always watching. And I've been involved in the industry since 1991. Providing compliance services, mostly running compliance departments. And now my passion is turned more towards speaking, writing, and teaching. So my main focus has shifted to finishing my 2nd book and moving forward in some of the educational arenas that we've been working within. And well, let me take this off now. All right, and I want to thank our sponsor. Our sponsor is Thompson Burton Law Firm. Offices in Nashville, Franklin, and Huntsville, Alabama. Thompson Burton provides legal solutions. They have more than 42 attorneys, 4,100 cases that they've won, and over 2,700 happy clients. So we appreciate Thomas Burton. They're always available to help. So thank you so much, Kevin and Clay. So I am excited to bring you 2 quotes from my book that fit this scenario so well. If you haven't picked up the book and you want to receive a copy, put DSS book in the chat and I'll be happy to send you a complimentary copy of the book. There's 2 quotes in the book that pertain to this episode today. One of them is, very significant. I'm going to ask Deborah whether this happened with her. Once you're in the crosshairs of a regulator, there is no doubt that they will join your company, and the rest is part of their basic investigation. So that is one of the quotes from the book. And the other one is, when a crisis arises, it's too late for preparedness. You've got to be prepared when something does come knocking on your door. And this is a prime situation of that happening. So visit the Direct Selling Solutions YouTube channel and subscribe. If you want to see previous editions of the show, they are listed on YouTube. So I'm so pleased to have this guest with me today. Our first guest is Deborah. She's the CEO, co-CEO at Neora, and she is so much more. She is such an incredible woman. I am so excited to meet her. I feel like I've known her for years and years and years. When we met, I asked her about the background of Neora, and she said, go listen to the podcast 1, 2, and 3. And I thought that was really interesting. She's got a podcast called Built to Win. And the players from Neora are on the podcast. In the original first 3 episodes, it talks about the case and it talks about the mindset and the situation. It was so enlightening. I became a serial watcher of Built to Win. I just watched and watched and watched. I think I watched 5 episodes. So I was really excited about that. And the insights and the in-depth account of this action, it was phenomenal. So when I saw Deborah on the podcast, I knew I already liked her. She's a woman of integrity. She will fight for what she believes in. I'm telling you what, and she is willing to speak her mind. She's also a strong advocate for empowering women. She's the co-founder of another company called Live Happy, and I do want to ask her about that. Before we do, let me just want to tell you a couple more things about her and her past. She's the first editor-in-chief of Success Magazine. She's 1,000% committed to personal growth. And I think that Live Happy is personal growth. Being the co-founder and CEO of Live Happy is personal growth. I went online and started seeing little bits and pieces of it, but I have so many questions for Deborah. But before we get into all the Neora stuff, tell us a little bit about Live Happy. Say hello to the group and tell us a little about Live Happy so we know what that's about.
Hey, everybody. So I've been in the direct selling industry since 1995, which is where I got really introduced to personal development. And it is, something that lifelong learning, we're not done till we're dead kind of concept, keep growing, keep learning. Why would you not? I mean, there's so much to experience in life, but I got introduced to it through direct selling and became a real believer. And I actually ended up working for Success Partners, who a lot of you guys are familiar with. And I started direct selling news while I was there, and I started Success Magazine while I was there. Success Magazine had existed, but it had been defunct for a while, and Stuart brought it out of bankruptcy, and I was able to be the first editor-in-chief and to get that product going again, which I'm really proud of. But through that discovery of really being involved in the personal development space, we came across something called positive psychology. And I so rarely get to talk to my direct selling colleagues about this. Thank you so much for for the opportunity, Donna Marie. It's something that I don't get to talk to the rest of the world about outside of our own company, but we discovered positive psychology, which is really the study of how you can use psychology and practices to not make sick people well, which is what psychology had always been, or make sick people normal or approach normal, but to really take normal people and help them thrive. And through that, it's like, oh, this is personal development with science behind it, which is so much of personal development as people's personal experiences. You find gifted speakers, gifted teachers like Jim Rohn, but there's no science behind it. Positive psychology had science behind it. And so when we started looking at that, it's like there's room for another property in this space. And Jeff Olson and I got together and started Live Happy. In fact, I started Live Happy with him long before I ever worked at Neora. And it was just it's a passion project for me, because I do think that people, when they can employ the right practices, can get more enjoyment out of life, get a more fulfilling life, and truly build the life that they want. And unlike so much personal development, it's not connected to money. It truly is connected to mindset and what you want out of life and building better communities and building stronger families. And, for me, it's what drives me. It's one of those things that I think more people need to involve themselves in, more people need to engage in. And there's so much great information out there. And at Live Happy, we collate it. We have a podcast called Live Happy Now. 20 minutes, listen to it on your way to work. It's a great piece, but it really is collating all this fantastic research that's being done out there in the area of personal well-being and human well-being, and bringing that to people who, positive psychology is a new science. And basically what scientists do is they sit around and publish papers that other scientists read. So we've taken those papers and brought them to the mainstream audience. And we've really had a great time doing that. And that's my side gig, but it's something that I'm truly passionate about.
On top of everything else, she's got a side gig. I love it. And I love the little videos. I went to look at them and I just got hooked on them, going through each one. So if you haven't had a chance to look at, the name of the website is Live Happy, and the name of the podcast is Live Happy Now.
Correct.
Okay. So it's livehappy.com.
That's correct.
Okay, we got it. Well,
free for everybody.
It's a great it's great. I really enjoyed looking at it. So I wanted to talk about it. Anyway, let's start here. Let's start with Jeff Olson and how the book or the philosophy shaped the case. I thought about where to begin, and I thought about just so many different aspects, and thinking that we were going to have Sandra on the call, I slanted it more towards the compliance department. But I think all of the questions really do pertain to the whole company. So let's start with Jeff, the book, The Slight Edge, the man, Jeff Olson, the company, Neora. Is it all one thing?
They're all interrelated for sure. When we talk about The Slight Edge, that is where Jeff and I met, was when he was developing The Slight Edge. I was actually one of the people who read it before it went to press. So I've known Jeff for a very long time, and he's a huge believer in helping other people grow and achieve their goals. But he's also a 30 plus year veteran of the direct selling industry. And, I love our industry, but I don't think anybody on this call or anybody affiliated with our industry wouldn't say there aren't problems within our industry. There are companies that, that are more interested in making quick money than longevity. There have been people in and out of business doing the right thing, saying the wrong thing. A lot of we've seen products marketed that are not marketed in a way that's not okay. So there are problems within our industry. By the way, there's problems in every industry. We just happen to live in this one, and so we're more familiar with those issues. No one gets a free pass. Every industry has problems. But his philosophy when starting Neora was to build a comp plan, build a business that had no gotchas. Our philosophy, by gotchas, we mean didn't have something that once people got involved, left a bad taste in their mouth. That's the best way I know how to describe it. Mm-hmm. For me, my philosophy and the philosophy of Amber Olson Rourke and Jeff Olson, and pretty much everybody at the executive leadership level in the company, is we want to make sure everyone who comes in contact with Neora has a positive experience, whether they make a dollar or not. In other words, our products have to be high enough quality that when they spend their hard-earned money on those products, they have a positive experience. If they enroll as a brand partner and come to a few meetings, even if they never make a sale, if they have a positive experience, a positive culture experience, if they get something out of that, if they learn something about themselves, we don't want them to regret having spent money with Neora. We want them to say, that was a good investment of my time. That was a good investment of my money. So that's been our goal from day one. And that really is, a joining of Slight Edge, a joining of Jeff's history in the industry. He's been around for a long time. I think most people in the industry know who he is. If they don't, they're new to the industry, not the other way around. And then Live Happy, and putting that all together in one basket and saying, we want to create a company where people can come here and thrive. And so that's that's kind of where we started. And that's a reason I think, leading into your conversation, that we were set up to make sure that we were in compliance with what regulators wanted. We were doing business the right way. We weren't trying to cut corners. We weren't trying to, sneak in under the radar. Our goal was to be out there, to be proud, but also to do things the right way so that, this wouldn't happen. And then it did.
Yes, yes, definitely. Okay, so let's go through a couple of just quick points, and then I've got a lot of questions for you. But Reader's Digest condensed. How long had Neora been in business before the FTC came knocking?
Let's see, about 5.5 years.
5.5 years. And how large was the company at the 5.5 year mark?
We were in the, let's call it, mid six figures.
Okay.
Mid six, yeah, mid 600, those six figures, yeah.
Okay. And how many distributors approximately?
It depends on how you count distributors, and I know we all struggle with this in our industry, right? So let's call it 65,000, 70,000, but that, you could say 250,000, you could say, but
Yeah.
we'll just call it.
And how big was the staff at that time?
So that's an interesting question and totally irrelevant related to this case, because I came in April of 2016, and we were doing a lot of internal IT development and trying to build a lot of things ourselves. And I had already made changes and decisions that we were going to outsource more. So the staff reduction we had a very large staff reduction, but it was more related to our business practices than it was to the FTC showing up at that time, and at least early.
Okay. And did you get any advanced warning?
No, but we also didn't get, I know a lot of people are familiar with the Vima case. We didn't get no one showed up to shut us down. We just got a confidential information demand, which was, hey, we're looking into your company. We need all of this information. That's right. All. Yeah. And I'm going to apologize real quickly. Although I'm plugged in, I'm getting a battery is low signal. Let me check my cord here. I think maybe my dog ran behind my chair and unplugged me.
Oh, okay. Well, hold on.
That took care of it. Apologies. Yes, that's what happened.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you just mentioned you started at Neora in 2016, April, and then in June is when the catastrophe happened.
Well, yeah, but I think it's real important. Everybody knows we didn't think it was a catastrophe at the time.
Or a crisis.
We didn't even think it was a crisis. They showed up, we're like, great, you want to look at what we got going on? Here's what we have going on. We shared everything with them. Now, our attorneys pretty quickly said, we know this guy, we know the lead investigator, and he's a dog with a bone, and there's no way you're not going to end up, they're not going to end up taking some sort of action because of who he is. But we honestly thought that eventually an adult would show up at the FTC and see that we were doing what we should be doing, that we documented what we should be documented, and that potentially it would go, it would go away, or we'd have a minor settlement on a couple issues. We never, at that time, I think it took us almost 2 years before we realized an adult, well, maybe even 3 years before we realized that an adult wasn't going to show up, that this was just, it was, it's a machine in motion. We're just going to try and force you into settlement no matter what.
Yes, that was the name of the game. Yeah. I love your slogan, make people better, and the 10 core values. I want to see them. I was trying to find them.
Sorry, I don't have them on my screen. I could look them up.
I'd love to see those puppies, but I think those core values really made a difference. In the beginning, they were just as important as they were after the FTC.
No, they are. I mean, it's all really our core values about how we treat people, and make people better is about how we treat people. When we talk about make people better, we mean give them the tools to help them improve their lives, whether it's products, whether it's an business opportunity, whether it's education, whether it's personal development, whatever it is. We use that as a guiding statement in our boardroom. Not we don't exactly have a board, but our executive leadership team, we use that as a guiding statement, and that's our goal, is to provide people ability to enhance their lives. And I know that's a lot of companies' goals or stated goals, but you really have to look at it from how does it impact your decisions? What decisions do you make differently if that's your goal versus maximize corporate profit? We all want to make a profit. We're in business to make money, but we don't want to make money at the expense of the people that are helping us build the business. We want them to also thrive. This is not about moving money from one group of people to another group of people. This is about providing service and creating value, both for our brand partners and the company itself.
And the value of the products. The value of products is what's driving the customers and driving the distributors and driving the company.
You got to start there. What you're selling has to have value and has to have demand. Otherwise, it's all going to fall apart. If the product you're selling does not have natural demand, meaning people would buy it for the price you're selling it as without it being attached to a compensation plan, that's what we mean by value. Would they buy it for the price you're selling it for without it being attached to a compensation plan? If the answer to that is no, you got to go back to square one. And the way you measure that is how many people are buying your product that aren't attached to your compensation plan. And that's a critical number. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, we got our customers up, we got to get our customers up, numbers up. You won't unless the product has value unattached to the compensation plan. And, in our case, we're in the, 78 to 80% every year of our product sales go to people that are not attached to our compensation plan. So we got that one checkbox, but I know there's a lot of companies still struggling with that. And that's what's got to be fixed for them to cross that bridge.
Yeah. Well, the FTC picked the wrong people to go after, because
they did.
You all just had your act together so well. And if it does become a movie, who's going to play you in the movie?
Probably nobody I have any idea about. It's gonna have to be an unknown.
Oh, all right. Well, let's get into the magnitude of this thing. When did you realize that this wasn't just a little event? You got into this job and you're working with IT and you're trying to make the company grow, and boom.
Yeah, I think we all knew it was a thing. And by say we all, I mean, obviously it wasn't like we weren't broadcasting to the world that, hey, we got a CID from the FTC, come watch. It was probably, we did 16 rounds of data production to the FTC. Our lawyer expenses were out of line with a healthy business. I mean, let's be honest, you're going to pay not just legal expenses, but not just lawyers, but everything related to data analysis, data storage, all of the things that you have to do. It can be a pretty hefty price tag. We were probably 18 months to 2 years in before we had our first actual meeting with the FTC. Until then, it was just data exchanges. It was just,
and they asked for a list of things, a million things.
And then you give it to them and they ask for more. And then you give it to them and they ask for more. And then you give it to 16 productions. So,
oh my gosh.
So it was a long time before we actually had a conversation with them. And until you have a conversation with them, you don't really, even though our attorneys, who were very good, did know, I don't think Jeff or I really believed them, because we knew that there was no there. But I don't think at the time, first of all, this is pre-Advocare settlement. So keep that in mind. Those first couple of years are pre-Advocare settlement.
Oh, okay. That's right.
And that had an impact on our thinking. The Advocare settlement had a very significant impact on our thinking. But we were really convinced, we were really not quite understanding that the FTC wasn't looking at Neora. And I truly believe this. I believe the FTC is trying to make multi-level marketing be the definition of a pyramid scheme. And I don't think we knew that for the first couple of years. We knew we were in compliance with all the guidance. We knew we were just more going, what are they doing? What is it that they're seeing that is an issue? We really didn't know. And then, fast forward and the Advocare settlement comes out, and it turns out that they settled to not be a multi-level marketing company. And then that is really the only thing the FTC wanted to talk to us about, was settling to not be a multi-level marketing company.
Right.
And then you see the new guidance that came out recently. We were just a tool, I believe, in them attacking multi-level marketing. I just honestly think that, but we didn't know that was their goal early. How could we have known that was their goal early on?
What were your fears back in the beginning when the letter came in and you were getting all these productions? What were your fears? What were you thinking?
The only thing we had an issue with a product. And so the issue, if you read our case, and I know some of you have, so there was
it's huge.
It is. And, you're only looking at that document, and that, I've got boxes and boxes.
Yeah.
But if you read our case, you'll find out there's a product we were selling. And when we started selling it, the scientist who helped develop got up on stage and he said some things he shouldn't have said. They were actually named in the lawsuit, but the FTC settled with them for $0 the same day the suit was filed. But they were, we thought, well, maybe it's going to come down to, we're going to have to make an agreement on product claims, because when that scientist said stuff and you've got 17,000 people in a stadium and they start tweeting out what they heard, even though they didn't understand what they heard and it wasn't said what, we had an instant problem, which took us 3 or 4 months, maybe 6 months to get real, true, complete control over it, even though our compliance department was working heavily to do that really from day one, before day one. So we thought maybe that was going to be the focus of the case. And to complicate things, the scientists who had been selling the product before, which is all over our case, they'd been saying things that we wouldn't say, and really were not within guidance of how you needed to market that product. When we acquired the rights to the product, we insisted they stop that, and they did. But the FTC conflated their pre-marketing with our actual marketing. And we honestly thought we were going to end up with some sort of a discussion about product marketing. We thought that's where this case was going initially. And it turns out it wasn't. So turns out we didn't spend a lot of time talking about that at all throughout the case. Very little time.
Well, we have some compliance managers and directors on the podcast. They are sitting there saying, how do you enlighten the owners and the co-founders and the co-executive? How do you enlighten them to get them to realize that doing the right thing isn't going to cost them money in the long run? The compliance department is the sales prevention department.
Yeah, well, they're not the only one. But
and the owners and founders sometimes don't give the credibility to compliance.
Well, no, I think there's a tendency to minimize the risk when it comes to compliance in their minds. It's a vast landscape. A lot of people, and this is not going to be news to anybody in compliance, in our industry especially, are not doing the right things. And, we constantly get questions from our field. Well, X company's saying it, why can't we? They can do it. Why? And our my response and our response has been, they can't do it. You're saying they can do it. They can't do it. They just haven't gotten a letter yet. They just haven't been shut down yet. They just haven't, they can't do it either. And we don't want to take that risk. For me, it's not about whether or not, for leadership, it should not be about whether or not they want to endorse their compliance department. It's whether or not they want to be able to attract customers, whether they want to be able to attract business builders, whether they want to be able to grow their business. Because the reality is, if you start saying things that are untrue, or that are maybe true but are hyperbole, or that may be true or unbelievable, you're not attractive to your average person who's getting presented this opportunity in their living room. They don't believe it.
They
right?
don't
And so you don't want to be out there to where you're talking about things that aren't believed. But the
Mhm.
other piece of it is you want an owner to understand they're not building for the next 6 months, they're building for the next 60 years.
Mhm.
Your ground floor has to be, we're going to do things the right way so that we can grow this long term for everybody involved. This is not about, we're going to grow this as big as we can in 5 years. And I guess for some companies it is. We're going to grow this as big as we can in 5 years, and then they'll go out and get an investment bank, and then I don't care. It's their job to clean it up. And you see companies do that. I've seen lots of companies do that. They're growing it as big as they can to get somebody else to buy them out, and then they're out. So they don't care.
Mhm.
So for me, it's not about, can the compliance director convince, or anybody in compliance or legal convince the executive to behave, or the owner to behave differently. For me, it's, do you have the right owner? And in our case, we do. And I hate to say that, but what are their motivations? What are they, we have the right owner. So it's easy to sit down and go, okay, if we do this, this is, if we don't do this, this is the picture. If we do this, this is the picture. And we've have very little executive interference with our compliance department. I wish Sandra, our director, was able to be on here today, but like Kevin, she's sick.
Yeah.
No, they were not in the same room together. They didn't. But, really it's, you have to make decisions for the long term, not the short term.
Mhm.
And if you have an owner that's willing to do that, you should be able to sit down and talk to them and paint a picture. Now, here's the other flip side of that. I sit in the co-CEO seat. The flip side of that is, a lot of times compliance wants to be a lot more conservative than we think is necessary.
Mhm.
And it's a dialogue. It's not an all or none. It's, hey, there's a difference between saying the best and the only,
Mhm.
right? If
Mhm.
you're not the only, then don't say you're the only, but we have that dialogue internally.
Mhm.
And we come to agreements. If we think compliance is being too strict in one area, we'll sit down and we'll look at why. What are the risks? What are they really saying? But you have to be educated in what the risks really are. And I think we're probably more educated than everybody at this point.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So that
So,
helps.
did you have different policies, or did you have the same policies in place? Did you have to change things a lot, or?
No, we didn't. We changed some policies and procedures as a natural evolution of the company.
Right.
Some things, and this is going to be a shock to some people, but if they read my trial transcript, they would see this. We don't have the 10 customer rule in our business. Like Amway's 10 cut, we don't have it. Why? Because we pay the brand partner for every sale to make to a brand new customer. Why would I withhold that check until they have 10 customers? That makes no sense to us. That is not our business model. And it's like, well, you're not following. No, I don't need 10 customers because they don't have the opposite problem. I don't have people earning checks without having built a customer base. So you just, and that, by the way, we made that change between when the company was launched and the case. And the reason we made that change is we went through and we reviewed our policies and procedures, and we said, we don't want policies and procedures we're not following. I pay everybody who's acquired. I mean, we pay everybody who acquires a new customer when they acquire that new customer, 20% of that sale. We're not going to wait till they have 10 customers to make that payment. So we need to remove that policy. So we just made sure that if we have something in the policies and procedures manual, it's something we actually enforce. If we're not going to enforce it, we're not going to carry it.
That's Kevin Grimes always says, if you're not going to enforce them, don't even have them.
Just it's worse.
It's worse. It's
Yeah.
worse if you're not going to do anything with them. And I see owners that say, well, when we get going and we get big enough, we'll get a compliance department. Or we'll do it right then. It's like, oh no, you're leading yourself down a bad path.
That might be a little bit late. When you get really going, you've probably got things out there that are going to take a while to get cleaned up. You need to start thinking about compliance.
Absolutely. All right, let's see. So compliance wasn't a major priority for you and Jeff before the FTC came knocking. It was a day-to-day SOP.
Yeah.
It wasn't,
We
it
didn't run
wasn't not thought about.
No, we didn't run around and go, oh, we need to hire a compliance department. We need to, no, none of that.
So tell me what the compliance department looked at like before.
Well, we've had some changes in our compliance department because we originally did everything internally. And then we contracted with the company, and then we reduced our internal staff, but we just didn't need everybody, but we still run our own checks. So before we had a department of, I think 6, you know, and but then we moved to external monitoring and external relighting, and now we have 2, but it's the same. It's actually better coverage. We track quarterly how many issues we deal with, what type of issues they deal with, how many terminations we have, how many repeat offend. We get that in our quarterly management meetings. So compliance comes in and does a presentation for us. And
Nice.
yeah, and so we do that every quarter. So we make sure we keep track. But it was for us. So the product. Let's go back to the product claim, which I know a lot of people think is what spurred our case. I don't think it is, but when those scientists got up there and made that statement, and then immediately we saw what was going on social media, the very next day we put out a letter from Jeff telling people they couldn't say the things they were saying and what they could say. Okay. The very next day we sent that to everyone who was a brand partner. And we put compliance on getting all the non-compliant posts down and re-educating people on what they could say about the product. Like I said, that took 4, 5, 6 months because people are people. But we were on it that day, and this is well before the FTC showed up. This is a year and a half or a year and 3 months before the FTC showed up. So we were on it, and it's because we knew that we were building something for longevity. We weren't building something for this is Jeff, when we launched the company, Jeff had a video, audio called The Last Run Club. He's been in this industry for a long time, and this is his last run, and he intends to stay here and do this and build this. And this is a legacy for his family. And that's what it is. This is the last run club. And so you're not building for 3 years from now, you're building for longevity. And you have to have compliance. You have to make sure that you're doing the right things in order to have a company that's going to last.
Boy, I have so many questions. I've got this. This is a good one. Okay. In the beginning, when you first got hired, heard about all this, was there ever a moment where you wanted to walk away?
Me? No, I'm a fighter. I was probably the most Pollyanna about the whole thing, in that I looked at it, I'm like, we're not doing anything wrong. This is gonna be fine. And I was really like that all the way through the end. I mean, all the way. I never actually thought we were in jeopardy of anything other than a slap on the wrist if there was anything. I didn't believe it. I thought that the law was on our side, and it was. I thought that our business practices were on our side, and they are. And when you look at the consumer complaints, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a national consumer complaint database where Better Business Bureau, FTC, state aid, they all put it together. We had an extraordinary low number of consumer complaints. In fact, TINA, Truth in Advertising Organization, which is, yes, in bed with the FTC in terms of they refer cases and the FTC takes them seriously because their director and a director at the FTC are good friends. They did a FOIA request for our consumer complaints. When they got it, they sent back, that can't be all, in an email chain. We knew we didn't have a consumer problem. We knew we didn't have a following the law problem, and we knew we didn't have a business practices problem. So no, I never considered, it never impacted my career decisions. I will tell you, it's not something I would wish on anybody else to live through. but it never impacted my career decisions.
Well, it's interesting. When watching on the Built to Win podcast, and somebody said, how did it affect you? It was 7 years. That's long enough for Jeff's daughter to have 3 kids. I think she had kids in the 7 years. And
yeah,
how did it affect you in your life? What?
Well, it became, it almost became a mission, right?
Mhm.
Yes, we've got the company to run, but I believe in our industry, and I believe in entrepreneurism, and I believe in opportunity. And frankly, it's just wrong for the government to come after an industry based off of beliefs that are not founded in fact. So for me, it was a personal mission. Um, I I think maybe because of my background, yes, sometimes the stress bleeds over, but for the most part, I'm really good about being where I need to be. Meaning, if I'm, I had friends that told me after they listened to our podcast, we had no idea you were going through that. You just can't let it consume you. You have to have parts of your life that are your life, right? So, you just go on, you just go on doing what you need to do for your family. I mean, you said, yes, Amber had 3 kids.
Yeah.
I had 3 kids when we started, and they were kids. Now they're, my
Wow.
oldest is going to be a senior in high school this year. So they've, in a lot of ways lived through this. They know mom spent a lot of time with lawyers and a lot of time in court, but it's a different, um, it's a different experience, but everybody has something that is so critically important that they need to get done. And this was just something that was critically important to get done. I think the hardest part of this whole thing for our field, for our company, and for me personally was the time between we got done testifying and the time in which the result was announced. Because that whole time, you're walking around going, I know we won, but did we?
Yeah.
But I know we won, but did we? And then you go to a DSA event and you hear everybody get up there and go, oh, well, what's going to happen is they're going to split the baby. The FTC is going to win some. 6 days before the ruling was released, I was sitting in a DSA event listening to everybody tell us how we weren't going to win. And you're going, well, but we did. So
You did in a big way, all 5 counts.
yes.
Amazing. Just absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be a movie. You need to think about who's going to play you. Oh, I know. One thing I wanted to ask about was the reporting in the compliance department. When I go in and look at compliance departments, I'm looking for a documentation that keeps everything that comes in the department, everything that goes out, everything that happens. That document, I call it a master intake document. I don't know what everybody else calls it, but that document is so critical and so important. Was that in place prior to
yes
happening? Yeah. So that was going on.
Yeah.
Was the IDS in place?
I don't know. I wish I did know, but I don't know.
I wonder about that, because now with everything that's happening, the IDS is being questioned. You're supposed to know how long it took for them to make the money and how much expense they cost to get to that money.
Yeah. So we had an IDS, and I don't know from. Let me think back here. Okay, we had an IDS before. And then we made the decision to go to a very short IDS that we felt couldn't be questioned. That is probably one of the few decisions we made as part of our court case. We don't want to get in the battle about whether it's, so we just made it exceptionally clear and brief. I don't think that will be our IDS going forward. I think we're going to add more data to it and make it more comprehensive. But when you're going to be going to trial based on your data, you don't want to give so much data that, and that was really our decision, was like, okay, we have this one that's got all this data on it. Let's go to one that doesn't have all this data on it, so we're not arguing about that piece in court.
Yeah.
So or
And I
whether
was
that was.
going to ask about the penalty offense authority letter, but it was long after your case had been
Yeah,
started.
we were already approaching trial when that came out.
When that came out and told everyone.
And and that came out in response to the AMR decision.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, when they lost their ability to fine people, they had to find a different way to fine people. Because ultimately, it's sad, but ultimately, it's all about money.
Yeah, yeah. The FTC thought you were going to roll over and that was going to be the end of it. And then they
Yep.
were going to go do the same thing to another company.
I still think that's was their plan. I think
Mhm.
Advocare, then us, and they didn't pick on small companies. They
Mhm.
picked on thriving companies, and
Mhm.
I think that they were expecting a different response.
Tell us about the FTC appeal that didn't happen.
They didn't have anything to appeal on. What were they going to appeal?
Yeah.
I mean, the
So,
law was in our favor. The data is in our favor. I mean, when we got the first ruling, we looked at it and we're like, the only thing, and this is an interesting tweak, not, legal people love to talk to me about this. It was the fact that in her ruling, she stated that our brand partners are not agents.
oh, yeah.
And that is the first time that happened in a case related to direct selling. So that's a big deal. We thought that maybe they might appeal on that because that really does, if distributors are not agents, it has to change the way they approach compliance, right?
Mhm.
Because then you're not, and they're not agents. My brand partner cannot go down and tell somebody, Neora is going to order 500 t-shirts from you, expect the check, and have that, and that person cannot come back and sue Neora because a brand partner went and told them that verbally. They're not our agents. And that's
Mhm.
a simple analogy. There's a lot of other things. They are not our agents. So how you do compliance is very different. There's no zero tolerance if you're not agents. And we've all heard the FTC say multiple times, we understand you can't be perfect. But if you're
Mhm.
not perfect, they're going to use that against you. So,
Mhm.
and if they're agents, you do kind of have to be perfect.
Mhm.
So that's a big ruling. We kind of expected an appeal on that, but we didn't see anything other avenue for them to appeal. But she footnoted that statement and basically said, even if they were agents, there's not enough evidence
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
Neora was out of bounds. So that's an early, that was an interesting kind of take on it. They can't really appeal agency because there's nothing to appeal with us. They wouldn't win anything.
Mhm.
So that I expect that to be much more strongly fought in future cases in our industry.
Mhm.
I think they're going to put on a lot more evidence on that. And I also think they're going to show up in a different venue and try and get a different case to
Mhm.
counterbalance our case. So
Mhm.
I think it's going to be interesting.
Mhm. In doing the research, I heard a few people say that the FTC was very arrogant and they just thought it was a slam dunk and they didn't have the responses in the court case that, they just expected to win.
Well, it was the presumption that the government's interpretation of the law is the interpretation of the law, and they're trying to change it. So if you look at, the Coscott decision, which basically says, you know, if you pay for recruiting, then that's a problem, right? I could read it for you. I'd have to pull up my computer screen, but everybody's interpreted that to think, okay, I need a couple things. And all the court cases have interpreted this to be a couple things. Number one, you cannot pay for pure recruiting. You can't pay a headhunter fee, right? We all know that. But the second thing was that if you have sales of actual products to end users and you pay commissions on those products, those are payments for product sales. The FTC is trying to say those are only payments for product sales if you're paying the seller of the product. If you're paying the upline of the seller of the product, that's a payment for recruiting. That's how they're trying to recast the Coscott decision. And that's just not what the case law says. So our 80% of sales to customers it didn't matter because uplines received a portion of those sales. Therefore, we were paying for recruiting.
Oh,
That was their argument in court. That's their
wow.
argument. That's the argument they're making at DSA events. That's the argument they're making in their new guidance. They're trying to change the law. So when they showed up in court, they made the assumption that the judge would accept their interpretation of the law. And that's not what happened. She went with the legal history.
And in a nutshell, do you know what effect, I wanted to ask Kevin, but what do you think would have happened to our industry if you all would have lost that case?
I think you, well, we probably would have appealed, just so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're in the Fifth Circuit in Texas, which is a relatively conservative circuit. I think we would have won on appeal. So just, you know, but in the weird event that we would have lost that case, I think that you would have seen more and more companies doing effectively what, you know, Rodan and Fields did last week.
Yeah.
Which is, we're not going to pay downline commissions anymore. We're only going to pay the seller, and that's it. I think you'd have companies moving to the Advocare decision just to avoid that in the United States. I don't think that, you know, a lot of our companies that are based here, their US business is not what, I mean, in our case, our US business is by far our largest business, but a lot of companies that are based here, their US business is almost ancillary to their global business. So they would have done what they could to protect their global businesses. That's what I think would have happened. For a lot of the larger companies, especially. Great, we'll do whatever the US wants so that they leave us alone in China or Korea or Europe or wherever it is we are.
And a win. The win meant to the industry everything.
It does, but I really need to make sure everybody understands what it gives you is a guideline and a guidance. I mean, look at our numbers, look at who we are, go through that case. This is not like, oh, every direct selling model is going to be okay or would have fared as well in court. Many would not fare as well as we did. And I think that the industry needs to be mindful of that just because we won, they're not immune to the FTC coming after them. And if they do, are you in the situation that we were in? Do you have compliance? Are you managing what your field says and educating them and training them? We didn't just have a compliance department. I have compliance training videos that I'm the one speaking on it. So they get the importance. We touch it at events. We have a newsletter. We have a Facebook webpage for compliance questions. We have a compliance department and a compliance functionality that our field understands is important, and we give it the importance it needs. But we also have a business model whereby we have true customer demand for our products. We're not fighting that. We know that we can sell to customers because we do every single day. That we have a business opportunity whereby if somebody makes sales, they get paid, not just the upline. So if you come into our business model, we have people who have never recruited another seller that are making thousands of dollars a month selling product. And we're okay with that. You have to have a business model that's going to stand up in court, as well as a compliance department where you're monitoring what people say. And you really have to be running a business in a way that you can be proud and not be worried about, we hope they don't find that. You know, that's going to be really hard to go to toe-to-toe with you. See if you're worried about that.
Yeah. But you did have a lot of things in place. And the goal today was to establish how to set your company up for success. And I think you had the quarterly meetings with the compliance department. You have a great field compliance guide book. And you give that to all of the representatives?
It's in our footer in our back office.
Okay.
So they all get it.
And they all get it.
And if they get a compliance letter from us, it tells them to go look at it and download it. That's part of our compliance letter. We also, by the way, work with our people. One of our compliance things I think that is different, and I think it's really important for compliance professionals to understand that this works. We come from an avenue of most of our people are people who've never been in business for themselves. They've never done direct selling before. They don't know. our compliance program is education first. So if they make a mistake or they do something they're not supposed to do, we don't threaten them with, hey, you do it again, you're going to be terminated. We say, hey, you said this, you need to say this, and you need to take that post down. Now, if they don't take the post down, of course, it escalates pretty quickly. But we educate them on what they can do, not just on what they can't do. And we have a dialogue with the people who make mistakes. And we look at it as makes mistakes. When you've got a mom who's never owned a business of her own and spends her time driving her kids to soccer practice or dance or whatever it is, and on the weekends she likes to get together with her friends and she has a Neora sip and sample, and they get some customers and they say the wrong thing in a Facebook post. They don't know. Education first is our compliance program. And we're kind and we're gentle with our brand partners, and we make sure that we're continually helping them do their business the right way, because their business ultimately is, what helps us build our business.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap up here. Let me see if I've got any more questions. I literally have pages of questions.
I'm sorry.
I love the Neora Gold Standard.
Yeah.
I love that now you're recognized.
We love it too, because we love it for the industry. I mean, yes, obviously I love the company. I love the company I work for. I love the people I work with, but I love the industry, and having that to point to and say, look, you want to run a good company, you want to feel good about what you're doing, look at this, do that. We love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I figured we'd wrap up early, but we sure didn't. We were going strong. And
I can go for a while.
I appreciate everybody being on the call. We had a great turnout, and we're going to have other sessions coming up. Just so you know, we're doing a training in August on the 13th and 14th. So far, we have Steve Richards, Kevin Grimes, and Clay Brewer that are going to help us with that training. Maybe we can have Sandra come back and do something for the training, because we're going to be talking about avoiding FTC trouble, a professional review of endorsements, testimonials, and staying out of hot water. And then on August 20th, we'll have our show, The FTC Doesn't Scare Me. Well, maybe a little bit. So come put that on your schedule as well.